Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Cool.
Yeah, so that link, the posted link worked, but the regular invite button didn't for some reason. I don't know.
All right, okay. Well, then in the end, I saw it, so everything's cool.
All right.
How are you?
I'm good,
Everything
man.
all right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, early morning, it's hot here. Bloody hot.
Yeah, I imagine. What temperature is it?
I think it's 30.
30. Wow. No, here in Switzerland now that would be almost impossible. I mean, we do get some warm days in spring, but it's kind of rare. It's probably in summer sometimes it gets close to 30, but again, it's rare because we are, in a mountain zone. There are the Alps, so
Yeah.
kind of difficult. It gets so hot. It actually gets very cold in winter. It gets freezing cold. So,
Like how cold?
oh God, like minus 11, minus 12, minus 15. It can be extremely cold. But
That's
perhaps I don't know, maybe even minus 20. I don't know, but sometimes it gets so freezing. Part of the lake here gets completely frozen.
mm,
All the trees and the benches near the lake are like completely frozen. You can see all the water. It's just amazing. There are actually a lot of pictures on the internet. You can see, for example, Geneva or Lake Geneva or Switzerland,
mm-hmm.
when the lake is frozen, and those pictures are just amazing. You can see cars and everything completely covered in ice. Not in snow, but in ice. So it's just amazing.
Mm. Well, minus 10 is t-shirt weather for Canadians.
I bet, yeah. It's still too cold for me because I wasn't born here.
Yeah,
So I
right.
was born in South Italy, so I'm kind of used to a warm weather. In South Italy it can get cold, but not that cold. But in summer it can get very hot, hot and humid, and it's just a completely different weather and climate. So I'm not entirely used to the climate here in Switzerland. Sometimes, it's so cold, I just want to leave and go somewhere, and I don't know, to the sea or somewhere abroad.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, different climate than Italy, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, if you spend 30 years of your life in South Italy and you're always, you used to go to the beach with friends, go to the sea, then living in Switzerland is somehow a bit weird because, there is no sea here. Okay, there is a lake, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Lifestyle is completely different.
yeah.
But still, there are a lot of wonderful places to see. Okay, I didn't miss the sea, but there are so many other things that you can see here. Wonderful cities,
Yeah.
beautiful cities. Like I went before. Today we've been to this city called Nyon,
hmm
and it's just beautiful. It's just fantastic.
Nice.
The weather, the panorama, the view. You can see the Alps, the lake, and all the mountains. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we got one viewer. We had two. I didn't advertise it, so I doubt we'll get too many live viewers.
Yeah, but
Um,
that's okay.
yeah, that's fine. Um, but from when we talked the other day,
Yeah,
we had a few ideas of what we could chat about that perhaps people would be interested in.
sure. Yeah.
But because a lot, I mean, you've got a lot of interesting concepts
Mm.
that I'm pretty sure people would be interested in hearing. I mean, is there anything you want to kind of start off on?
Well, there are so many things, so many topics because we were talking in the beginning a bit, about the patriarchy and heteronormativity, hypermasculinity, hyperfemininity. There are so many topics, so I don't even know where to start. Perhaps the main thing, will be probably to start predominantly about MGTOW because we're here about MGTOW. We're here, against feminism and trying to, I don't know, find a solution to men's issues, men's problems that affect, so many men,
Hmm
of so many different types of men, straight men, gay men, black men, white men, there's these issues today are very relevant. And as you know, as everybody knows here in this community, these issues are usually people don't really want to talk about these issues, on TV and the news, we know that it's usually mostly about women's issues,
Yeah.
women's problems, and that that I think that has to stop. At least it has to change,
Hmm.
and I think it's important that our culture starts to care about also men's issues and men, predominantly because if you think about it, in many countries, the majority of suicide are men, the majority of homeless people are men, the majority of veterans are men, so there are real issues here, but issues that the society just doesn't want to see because we all pretend that men are always strong, they're always powerful, they can take care of themselves, and at the same time they can take care of women, children, the whole society, as if men were these indestructible robots, and that's not the case. That's not true. Men are humans just like anyone else. They can have their problems.
Yeah. And interesting enough, just today, I was linked to a video titled
Yeah.
Radical Feminism, Misandry, and the Rise of MGTOW. So
All right. Okay.
I jumped to the channel to watch it. I realized I wasn't subscribed, but
Hmm.
the guy had 33,000 subscribers. But here's the kicker: his name of his channel is Computing Forever,
Yeah.
and he's got 33,000 subscribers because he does computing news.
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
talks about computers and computing news. So as I watched the video, the entire 21-minute video,
Yeah.
he basically said, I don't normally talk about this. This is the first time I've talked about this issue.
All right.
Uh,
Okay.
but he came out and started talking about how radical feminism, how misandry and a hatred toward men is partly responsible for this rise of MGTOW.
Yeah.
And and I think that's pretty fascinating because here's a person who does not dedicate his content to MGTOW, but he's mentioning it.
Yeah. Well, at least it's something. There
Mhm.
are some other channels. There are even some feminist channels who are talking about MGTOW. Of course, not in a very positive way,
Right.
as you probably understand. But
Mm.
they are talking about it. At least on the internet. On YouTube, they are starting to talk about it. Even those who have nothing to do with MGTOW, at least no, they have noticed because there are today many MGTOWs online. They're uploading many videos, and I don't know if you've noticed, the Google Trends,
Hmm.
and now MGTOW is kind of skyrocketing. Since 2009, it's going so up, in the views online. So it's becoming slowly more and more relevant, at least in the internet. Not, I wouldn't say outside, in the real world, but at least in the world online, it's kind of becoming more and more relevant, which is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it kind of got me thinking about when I just yesterday when I did that interview with Sandman. He mentioned
Mm.
uh, Louis Markle came up. Do you know
Yeah.
Louis? Yeah, do you know Louis
Oh, yes,
Markle?
yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, he came up, and I was kind of late getting as a subscriber to his MGTOW content. But the guy was
Yeah.
originally a posting bodybuilding stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I saw. I watched a few of his videos. Yeah, and I know that he is a bodybuilder. He likes that. I have watched some of his videos. So, but I've noted that he is. I don't know if he's a MGTOW but I do believe that he is predominantly an anti-feminist.
Well, he's called himself a MGTOW in the past.
Right. Okay.
So,
Okay.
but he seems to not be doing so much MGTOW content at the moment. But he went through a really strong phase, and one of the things that came up in that Sandman interview is that Louis Marco, because he had so many subscribers,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, instead of talking about bodybuilding, he started talking about MGTOW. The MGTOW community boomed.
Yeah. A lot of people started watching. Yeah, of course. That's the point. Yeah, exactly. You're right. Because it's also people who have a lot of subscribers. As soon as they talk about it, if they talk about MGTOW, either in a positive way, like for example Louis Marco, or in a negative way, like other feminist channels, but still they're talking. So it's still a good thing because people might be attracted to it. Trying to be interested, and perhaps they're going to start to slowly, I don't know, watch some videos, maybe uploaded by either Stardust or Barbarossa or others, and in the end, it could be a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, anyway, I was just happy to see this Computing Forever guy bring it up.
Yeah.
I mean, that means that he's just made a video that 33,000 subscribers
Yeah, exactly.
who are there for computing stuff now know about MGTOW.
Yeah, but you know, there are also other YouTube users who are very popular, and they don't directly talk about MGTOW, but they are openly, they're very popular on YouTube. Like, for example, Sargon of Akkad. They are predominantly anti-feminist. You know, they're extremely against feminism, and you know, they usually either make fun or, in, you know, in a sort of not very serious way, or, for example, they just counter-attack feminism.
Yeah.
You know, all the shaming language and all the blaming and all that stuff. So it's still positive, even if they don't mention MGTOW, because you know, when people start to get interested in anti-feminism, I think that sooner or later they will, you know, they will start to watch 1 or 2 videos uploaded by MGTOW, and that's still a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that Sargon of Akkad, he talks directly about MGTOW. There are others like Skeptor or Goodfella. They don't directly mention MGTOW, but they are still anti-feminists.
Yeah.
And that's still a good thing, you know, because they have also a lot of subscribers.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people who watch their videos, they're still going to be at least indirectly interested in the topic. And sooner or later they will start to watch 1 or 2. You know, you start with one, perhaps with Barbarossa or Startup, and you're gonna watch others and more videos, and you know, there is some good content. So there are some very good videos. So I think it can be quite interesting and in the end relevant.
I would really like to see some of those guys actually drop the name in their videos and do a serious talk about it directly. I would love to see that.
Oh yeah, me too. You know, if they start to talk about it, you know, mentioning it, it would still be, you know, a very positive thing. That would be awesome. You know, that would be an excellent. You know, it's important to talk about it. You know, and okay, I don't pretend that you know, they have to talk about it always in a positive way, because you can't expect that to happen. Perhaps some of them are probably going to criticize or not precisely identify themselves, or they won't completely accept the label, but still it's important to talk about this.
Yeah.
Now that MGTOW is becoming, at least online, more and more popular, so that is still a good thing.
Yeah. Also, obviously, we share a lot of the same buzzwords. You know, like patriarchy.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Because you know, I think that both MGTOWs, anti-feminists, or MRAs, you know, men's rights activists in the men's rights movement, you know, we have a lot in common. You know, many of these words, of these labels, of these topics and arguments, we share a lot of these positions. Perhaps some are MRAs, some are MGTOWs, some just identify as anti-feminists or non-feminists.
Yes.
But at least, you know, we have a lot in common. So that's an excellent point. You're right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and because of that, it's sort of, that's a good connection between us, you know, sharing those. Even though we have some of our own vocabulary, and slightly different opinions on them, but they're still there.
Oh yeah, of course. No, like for example, you know, what we were talking about, and I was talking about this, you know, in other hangouts with other MGTOWs, you know. And we were talking, you know, with other MGTOWs in other hangouts, you know, about words like the patriarchy or heteronormativity, which, you know, you remember I said that actually these words can be very crucial and can be very beneficial.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I was actually suggesting, and I have been saying this for quite a long time, you know, that it's not entirely convenient to either MGTOWs or anti-feminists to completely reject these words, because actually these words can be very useful, very beneficial to anti-feminists. I wouldn't entirely dismiss and reject these words like the patriarchy or heteronormativity, because, as I said, these can be very useful to anti-feminists. And
Exactly.
the problem here is that feminists have infiltrated the language, as you probably already know.
Yeah.
They have infiltrated the language because they have to control the narrative, so they want to be in complete control of what's said about gender issues. And for that reason, they have, this is my opinion, of course,
Hmm.
they have infiltrated, and these words like the patriarchy and heteronormativity, they have completely hijacked the meaning of these words.
Yeah.
And they have given some sort of feminist version of these things. And of course, I totally understand the how can I say, the approach that anti-feminists have, because they're thinking, okay, the patriarchy, at least the feminist version of the patriarchy, and the feminist version of heteronormativity is just rubbish, it's just garbage. So they tend to reject. But the problem here is that they reject the whole thing. And I think that's not a smart move, because it's not a good strategy. Because you remember I was making the example, if you have a child and you want to, give your child a bath, after that you throw away the dirty water, but you keep the baby. You don't
Yeah.
throw the dirty water and the baby,
Yeah.
And that's precisely what I try to mean, about the patriarchy and heteronormativity. They have hijacked and infiltrated. They have given their own version, and of course, anti-feminists hear that version of the patriarchy and heteronormativity, and they say, this is just garbage. This is just ideological nonsense, and we reject the whole thing. And I say, wait a minute. Are you rejecting their version, or are you rejecting the whole thing? Right?
Right.
So
Well,
that's basically my own opinion. So
okay. Well, okay. I think you're correct with that opinion, and
yeah,
well, again, I'm gonna actually just reflect on something I saw today,
yeah,
which was I think it was today or yesterday. It was a Sargon video,
yeah,
and he was just doing his normal shtick, breaking apart some feminist doing a speech of some
yeah.
kind, and he mentioned the exact same thing about hijacking language, and one of the things I think he mentioned,
Mm.
what was it? They hijacked the word racism.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What word?
Racism.
Racism. All right. Okay.
Okay, and because I think in the video, there was some immigrant woman who might have been Middle Eastern. I can't remember now, but and she was going on about how women from minorities cannot be racist.
Well, of course,
So
of course, but of course. I mean, I haven't watched his video, and I'm probably going to watch it later. But I totally understand that, because that's their strategy. Their strategy is absolute and complete victim status. They have to play the victim card constantly.
yeah,
So giving this idea that women are simply incapable of making mistakes, which is, that's the paradox, like saying that women are not human beings.
yeah,
That's kind of ridiculous. Women, just like men, they're human beings, and they can also make mistakes. Who said that only men can make mistakes? That's absurd nonsense.
yeah,
That's not just about racism, because it's also about homophobia.
yeah,
And the idea that the only homophobes can only be straight men, I can tell you that's absolutely ridiculous. And
yeah.
I know that for sure, because I lived that in first person.
Hmm.
The worst homophobes in my family were the women, not the men.
Hmm.
They were the worst homophobes, and they gave me a very hard time. So the idea, my best friends in real life, I'm not talking about online, they're all straight men, and they have been always very supportive. I have never had any kind of problems. My two best friends that I have in South Italy, they are two Neapolitan, Italian, South Italian men.
Hmm.
They're both straight men, and they are the most wonderful human beings. They're just decent, honest, good individuals who have always demonstrated they're very tolerant, very open-minded. In my family, the ones who were particularly hateful, but and this is not a joke, it was the women. So, you know, the idea that women can't be racist or can't be homophobic, that's just rubbish. It's just ideological nonsense. It's still the idea that women are these infallible, good people who care about others. That's not always the case. That's not true.
Yeah, and I think the most fascinating thing about this concept is how they hijack existing language.
Yeah,
Not even hijacking existing pop culture, which we're seeing a lot of when, you know, Gamergate and all that stuff, but
yeah,
actually hijacking existing language and then
sure.
changing the meanings so that they can support their narrative. Because if they were to define their narrative by the original meanings of the words, their
Yeah,
entire platform would just collapse.
yeah, but of course, you know, I was trying to, you know, explain this concept before when I was in other hangouts with other MGTOWs, and I was saying, you know, not being either intolerant or offensive or insulting. I'm just trying to say what I have experienced in my life. What I have seen is that predominantly women don't start systems. And this is a theme that I keep repeating over and over and over. What do I mean by that? That they don't start systems. Women don't really build a system. They don't build a civilization. They don't build a society. It's predominantly up to men. And I think that this is so clear that a lot of people would agree with what I'm saying. Men build the whole civilization. Men build the whole society. Men build all the infrastructures, you know, all the hospitals and universities and skyscrapers and train stations and airports. Everything is built by men. So basically, women don't really start systems. But, you know, I'm very tempted to believe that what they can do is that allow men to do all the, you know, all the hard work, and then once the system is finished and completed, they start to slowly infiltrate it, right? So I guess that this is exactly what's happening, you know, in the education system, in the justice system, and in language, of course. So I'm not surprised that they would infiltrate, would hijack words and terminology and language in order to be in complete control of the narrative. To me, it's not an absurd concept. You know, that's the way it is.
Yeah, I think it's pretty.
Uh,
I think it's pretty obvious. It's pretty clear that they do that. I mean,
Yeah, but unfortunately, see, outside the internet, if you're in the real world, you can't really say these things, because if you say these things, you are immediately identified as a woman hater or a misogynist, which is not true, because, you know, just the way I could say that, you know, women kind of tend to hijack systems, I can also say that men are actually the disposable and expendable robots of these systems. So aren't I being as hateful against women just the way I'm being as hateful against men? No, I'm not, because it's not about being hateful. It's just about calling things with their own names, being honest, being rational, you know, and telling it as it is.
yeah.
So, you know, about the hijacking, and this is exactly what I was saying before about the patriarchy and heteronormativity. You know, it is a huge mistake that anti-feminists reject the patriarchy only because, and this is completely unfair, I don't agree with that, only because feminists have infiltrated and hijacked and completely manipulated the meaning of these words. That makes no sense to me, because, you know, I keep saying that actually the patriarchy as a societal structure, you know, it can be a real thing, but we have to be, you know, objective. We have to look at it and see if it's true or not. Now, the feminist version of the patriarchy is just absurd nonsense, because they're claiming that the patriarchy is a societal structure built by men in order to favor men and in order to ruin women. Where the hell do they get that absurd nonsense? That is not true. That is completely false. My idea of the patriarchy, and I remember what I was saying the other day, the patriarchy is la società patriarcale, il patriarcato. Padre means father. So the patriarchy is basically the societal structure ruled by the father. But what does that mean? You know, that is the Latin Roman concept of the pater familias, who is the father of the family. So the sort of the role, this gender-specific role of a father, someone who has to protect. He has to protect women and children. And you can see it in our society. This is exactly what has happened for many, many centuries, actually thousands of years, where men were supposed to help save and protect women and children.
Right.
And I just find it impossible to deny that. So the patriarchy, the feminist version of the patriarchy, is a societal structure built by men to favor themselves and to ruin women. No, that's wrong. That's a lie. The real patriarchy as a societal structure is a system, it's a society dominated by a very small minority of men. It's a microscopic portion of men. So we already have a lie there, because they say men control everything, men have power. Really? How is that possible? How can you come up with that nonsense? Because it means that you don't understand hierarchy. You don't understand the pyramidal structure. It's like saying that the army is full of generals. No, it doesn't make sense. There are just very few generals. And then there are many, many privates, many soldiers.
Right.
So this societal structure, which is dominated by a very, very small minority of men, and that immediately eliminates the concept that men have the power. No, it's a very small minority of men who are put in positions of power, control, and leadership. Actually, are they really oppressing and subjugating women? Not really, because they're usually exploiting other men, who are the majority of men, who have absolutely nothing to do with power, leadership, and control. That is my idea of the patriarchy. So the patriarchy is a societal structure where power, leadership, and control is given to a very small minority of men who do not oppress women. They tend to oppress other men. Basically, men who are completely exploitable, completely disposable, completely expendable, who have no power, no leadership, and no control, and they're basically sent to their death. And these men are the majority of men, right?
Yeah.
So there is, in the end, a huge difference between the feminist nonsense version of the patriarchy and what I believe is a real societal structure, where in fact it's a small minority of men who are oppressing the large majority of men who have no power.
Yeah. So basically, the feminist version of patriarchy is a system run by men in order
to ruin women.
Yeah, oppress women.
Which is absurd nonsense. If that was the case, the sinking of the Titanic. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that the Titanic was sinking and men were giving absolute priority to women? They were trying to do everything they could to save women's lives. What kind of patriarchy is that? A patriarchy as a societal structure where men do everything they can to save women at the cost of, self-sacrifice and dying, sinking with the ship. That doesn't make sense.
No.
Sorry. That version of the patriarchy is absurd nonsense.
Yeah.
Right?
Whereas the real version is a system run by a minority of men, or put into place by a minority of men, and built on the shoulders of most men,
or of the majority of men who have absolutely nothing to do with power, leadership, and control.
Yeah.
And they are turned into, what I was saying before, the father. Patriarchy is patriarcato, and patriarcato means the father. So the father who would do everything he can to save women and children, to the point of turning his own 18-year-old son into a disposable soldier. And what happened in the past, for centuries, older men of power were sending women to their death. No, children. That is even more absurd. They were sending young men to their death. And that is just incomprehensible from the point of view of the completely corrupted version, the feminist version of the patriarchy. Because in a patriarchal society, and I'm talking about now the feminist version, in a patriarchal society, you would see men turning women into disposable and expendable tools. Sending women to die somewhere. That's just absurd nonsense. The only case when women were expected to do the heavy jobs, very dangerous, risky jobs that men were doing. It was like, for example, during the Second World War, when men were just not available because they were dying, they were fighting, abroad in other countries. There were no men to run factories, and that was the reason why there were no men around. So there was no way out. And in that case, the only way out was for women to work in these factories and build, either airplanes or cars or bombs, because men were basically dying in the slaughterhouse of the war.
Right. So
that is an absurd version of the patriarchy. It's just completely ridiculous.
So
I was also pointing out the fact that, I was talking about the Titanic, and I was saying, a lot of people don't realize that not only a lot of men, forget about men. Who cares about men, because men are disposable and expendable, and everybody expects men to give their lives to save women. What a weird patriarchy. But actually, a lot of children died. Very small kids, they died because women had absolute priority. And what a disgusting, horrible thing that a 65-year-old woman has priority, and a 12-year-old child has to die on the Titanic. That is just amazing.
Yeah.
That is just unbelievable. So whoever supports that kind of patriarchy, the feminist version, they have got to be out of their minds.
Yeah. Well, most of them are, but
Yeah.
Also, I mean, going back to the war and when women started to have to work in factories, if you remember the feminists have also, they love this. They love the logo where they've got the woman, "We can do it," the "We can do it" logo, and that comes from World War II, I believe. And that was propaganda to get women to feel comfortable taking over these men's positions, because there were no men to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it wasn't the only episode, because a similar thing happened in the Soviet Union, during, in the beginning of communism. So we're talking about predominantly the early 1900s, the 1920s in the Soviet Union, where actually the Communist Party was also trying to do the exact same thing. But, in a way, even earlier than it happened in the West. There are many manifestos. Communist manifestos in the Soviet Union were actually, the Communist Party was actually trying to invite women, which that is very interesting. If you look at these manifestos, these communist manifestos in the Soviet Union, they're just amazing. They're just unbelievable. Basically, what they were trying to do, they were trying to tell women, Russian women, they were trying to brainwash them into believing that they were trapped at home. This is the pure feminist garb, feminist theory. The poor things, though, they were slaving around the house, which is kind of ridiculous, because these women in 1920s, 1930s, who had for the first time, the first kitchen appliances that were actually making women's tasks much easier. Can you imagine that the Communist Party was using these tools to get women to think that they were being oppressed, which is unbelievable, just to take them out of the house and have them to work in factories, to make them work hard as men, to tax them, and to treat them just like men. And I think it worked, because a lot of women thought, oh my God, I'm oppressed because I'm cleaning the house, much better to work in a factory. And they started to experience real hell that men knew for decades or even centuries. So it's this kind of constant brainwashing, telling women it's either either a political ideology or it's feminism. There's always someone telling women out of convenience, you are oppressed. You have to be scared so that we can control you. Someone is trying to oppress you. But that is, it's just amazing to me. It's unbelievable.
So basically, under the real patriarchy, women were the most privileged species on the planet.
But let me tell you something. I find it almost impossible to deny that. I think that the greatest privilege is to live in a society where you don't have to build anything, right? You have a complete civilization served to you on a silver dish where you don't have to build anything. How on earth are you oppressed? If you look at, for example, African Americans, and they were enslaved. They were shipped to the Americas, to America and to Brazil and so on, and they were enslaved. They were basically turned into human robots. They had to do all the horrible jobs the white people didn't want to do, right?
Mm.
So we have two completely different oppressions, and that is the weird paradox. We have African Americans who had to do the horrible jobs that white people didn't want to do, and women didn't have to do these jobs. They didn't have to build anything. So how is it possible that both African Americans and women were oppressed? And I'm obviously talking about predominantly white women. How is that even possible? Well, one group of oppressed people has to do the hardest, most disgusting jobs, and the other group of alleged oppressed group of people, they're told, oh no, don't worry, this is too dangerous for you. You don't have to take care of that.
Mm.
You know, that is just amazing. You know, how can you possibly compare the two and even suggest that white women in America or in Brazil, they were just as oppressed as African Americans? No, that is just absurd nonsense. Women were not enslaved. They didn't have to work for long hours on a plantation. You know, perhaps black women, but black women, they were not there because of their gender. They were there because of their race and their skin color.
Yeah.
So I would rather talk about it from a point of view of race, not of gender.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes way more sense, obviously.
Well, you know, the most important things, you know, what I'm trying to say is that anti-feminists should stop rejecting these words like the patriarchy or heteronormativity, because they're not doing any favor to anti-feminism. If we want to be serious about this, we should actually start to embrace these words. You know, if, for example, many anti-feminists were in a conversation with a feminist, and this feminist was going completely insane and saying, oh, the patriarchy is oppressing women because it's a societal structure ruled by men to destroy women. You know, many anti-feminists would answer to that, would say, oh, no, that's rubbish because the patriarchy does not exist. If I was in a conversation with a feminist, I wouldn't reject it. I would say, you are right that there was a patriarchal structure, that there was a patriarchal societal structure. You're right. But that societal structure was not to oppress women. It was basically to oppress the majority of men who had absolutely nothing to do with positions of power, leadership, and control, and they were turned into disposable and expendable tools and robots and soldiers and construction workers, things that women never had to experience in their past.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, man. It's an interesting concept that needs to be kind of shared around. It makes a lot of sense, and I think it's historically pretty self-evident.
Yeah, you know, if we just reject that, if we reject the whole thing, you know, if we reject the word just because that word has been infiltrated and hijacked, then, you know, chances are that nobody is ever going to listen, because now it's just mainstream. It's just, you know, everybody's talking about it, medias, journalists. So if you go there and you dismiss it and say, oh, the patriot, that's just rubbish, right? We don't believe in, that's just ideological garbage. We don't believe, we just completely, fully reject the patriarchy. You know, nobody's ever going to listen to you. They're not going to, because they're going to think, are you crazy? Of course there is a patriarchy. The patriarchy is real, because power, if you look at history, power has always been given to men. So it would be a good strategy to say, yes, it's true, but you can't say it was given to men, because you're suggesting that all men were powerful leaders and in control. The great majority of men have absolutely nothing to do with that, right? The great majority of men have the duty to build a society for everybody, including for women and children. Women who didn't have to build anything. How on earth is that oppression? It's not. That is not oppression. That is actually a form of privilege, and it's a hell of a privilege.
Yeah.
I just hope that, you know, at least one day, both anti-feminists, perhaps even MRAs and also MGTOWs, will stop rejecting these words, only because you can see how feminists, you know, they control the narrative. They control the narrative to the point that they're clever, to the point that, you know, in the end, anti-feminists reject the whole thing. And I would say, don't do that. Reject their garbage. Don't reject the whole thing, because actually that could be convenient to anti-feminists.
Well, on that topic, what about the term heteronormativity? Because that's a term I'm not familiar with. I'm not that familiar with it.
Yeah, a lot of people get it wrong, because there is the word hetero. And again, you can see the way they have completely infiltrated this word and hijacked it to give the idea that it's, they keep saying white straight males, cis-scum, cisgender scum, they're using the word. They have hijacked the meaning of this word to give the idea. It's straight men, white straight males, heterosexual males who do horrible, disgusting things to either women or minority or black people or homosexuals and so on. But actually, the word hetero, in that word, it doesn't mean heterosexual, because hetero is a Greek word and it means other. So normativity is actually a set of rules, and that applies to all males. It doesn't apply to straight men. You see, there is unfortunately a lot of ignorance, and unfortunately a lot of people don't really understand the real meaning of heteronormativity. And of course, just like the patriarchy, they just tend to reject the bullshit, the absurd nonsense, the completely corrupted meaning that feminists have given to the word heteronormativity. Heteronormativity is a set of rules that all males have to follow, right, when they approach people of the other gender, meaning women. Hetero means other. Normativity means a set of rules. And these rules apply to all males. It doesn't matter if it's black or white, gay or straight. It makes no difference. For example, one part of heteronormativity is that the society expects men to get married to women, right? Many religions expect that. Many religions like Christianity, Islam, they do expect, if you're a good Muslim, if you're a good Catholic, Roman Catholic, you have to do the right thing and you have to get married to a woman. You have to start a family, you have to get a woman, you have to marry and get married to a woman, she will be your wife, and you have to start a family and have children. But what do you think that only applies to either whites or blacks or straight? It also applies to gay men. There are many gay men around, millions of gay men who cannot be themselves. They are not allowed to be themselves and be who they are with their identity. And the society is also expecting them to get married to a woman. I had a lot of shit from my family, and they were expecting me to be with a girlfriend, or do the right thing and get married. Heteronormativity is a set of rules where males are supposed to do the right thing when they approach a female. For example, this perhaps would be trivial, but part of heteronormativity is that you are supposed to do things for females. What do you think, that these things only apply to straight men? No, of course not. No. If you have to be a gentleman, and you have to take care of women and give them, priority. Do you believe that only applies to straight men? Do you think that on the sinking Titanic, people would say, okay, that only applies to straight men, that they have to be completely disposable and completely expendable, other men no? No. If you are expected in a society to hold doors open for a woman, like royalty has just showed up, and you have to unroll the red carpet, and you have to open doors for what do you think, that it only applies to straight men? Of course not. The society expects all men to approach the other gender, hetero, and follow a certain set of rules, which is normativity. Heteronormativity is a set of rules the men have to follow, they have to respect when they approach a member of the other gender. Now, feminists have completely, once again, they have to control the narrative because they have to claim victim status. They have completely hijacked the meaning of this word, and they've given a false meaning of this word, meaning it's all the white, straight, heterosexual, cis-scum men who oppress women. That's garbage. That's not true. How is a man oppressing a woman when he is supposed, in our society, to help a woman, give her priority, hold doors open, or carry, I don't know, heavy luggage for her? You've probably noticed that when a woman is on a train or in an airplane, there are like many men around her immediately saying, would you like a hand? Would you like me to lift that up because it looks heavy? That's part of heteronormativity, the way that men absorb in their children since they're very young, they immediately absorb that, regardless of their race or skin color or gender or sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. It's just identity, nationality, citizenship. These things are completely irrelevant. If you are a male, if you're a small boy, you immediately absorb these heteronormativity, so these sets of rules where you actually have to take care of the women, your mother, your sister. You have to do many things to help them and support them.
Yeah.
Now, I can say, I can see that in a traditionalist society, that might work. Because let's be fair, men on average are stronger, they're faster, they have more physical power, they're taller than women. So I presume that, if there is some heavy task, we can all agree it's kind of intuitive, right?
Yeah.
But you cannot use that and turn heteronormativity into a societal structure which is oppressing women. That how do you come up with that stuff? That doesn't make sense, right?
So basically,
in that case, is actually giving women not only a priority, it's actually helping a woman. When you hold doors open, or you're helping a woman in a train with her luggage, you're not oppressing her, you're helping her, right?
yeah.
How is that oppression? How did they come up with the stuff?
So basically, the difference is that heteronormativity traditionally means men being expected by society to help women.
There it is. It's not just expected to help them. It's also expected to give them priority, to do certain things, to do the right thing. When a father or a mother or parents, family members are telling their son, boy, you have to do the right thing, you have to marry her. What if he doesn't want to?
Right.
Isn't that an expectation? Isn't that part of a set of rules that men have to obey, they have to follow?
Yes. So, and the feminist version is basically taking that and saying it actually means a society where men oppress them.
Yeah, exactly. Which is just, that's the bullshit from the Twilight Zone. That is the weird thing from Planet X, that's just incomprehensible. But until you remember that they have to control the narrative, because they have to keep playing the victim card, and they're doing it over and over and over. No matter what happens, if you ignore women, you're a misogynist. You're ignoring her because you hate her. But if you pay attention to her, you're still a misogynist, and you're still giving her unwanted attention. Just imagine that. We got to that point where you damn if you do, damn if you don't.
So this is an interesting concept. If lately, you see the concept coming up that more and more men are refusing to get married, right?
Yeah.
And often, they'll look for excuses by saying, "Oh, men aren't." Basically what they're doing is men are not applying their heteronormativity. They're not doing what they're expected to do.
They're not doing the right thing. Son, you have to do the right thing, you have to marry her. But men are now slowly learning that this is actually very counterproductive. And of course it is. Many of these laws, if you think about VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, if you think about all these federal acts, all the laws about domestic violence, or either separation, divorce, child custody, alimony, all these laws are completely against men and completely in favor of women, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, marriage is becoming more and more counterproductive to many men, right?
Yes, exactly.
And of course, they want to step out of a very bad deal. And this very gynocentric society is telling men, hey, what did we tell you? Boy, you have to do the right thing. Get married. Now the men are saying, no, I don't want to anymore. And now the society is again using shaming language, shaming men, blaming, oh, they're just a bunch of losers. They're just a bunch of douchebags still living in their parents' basement, playing stupid video games, or I don't know, watching misogynistic porn or some shit, because that's their the narrative is that. Blame them and shame them as much as you can.
And they even call us gay.
Yeah, but of course, and which is kind of strange, because they claim They support minorities, they support gay people. You know, they're being so good. They're doing that because they want to give the idea they're so good, so special, so kind. But actually, if you're so special, so good, and so kind, and you care about others, why are you using me and my sexuality to shame straight men? What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that? What the hell is wrong with you? And I had a lot of problems with feminists about that. You know, as a gay man, I had a lot of discussion, and you know, that is something I could find it very insulting and very offensive. But as an anti-feminist, I don't care about feeling fucking offended all the time. I don't care. You know, that's not the point. I don't want to feel offended or insulted. I just want to know, why are you doing that? If you claim that you're so gay friendly, why are you using that shaming language against me, a gay man, and against straight men? Why are you doing that? They're doing that because they're trying to control straight men. They're trying to control them by shaming them, by mortifying them, by humiliating them, by making them feel inadequate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all down to the thing that I was saying before. Hey, you have to do the right thing, right?
Yes. Well, it's funny because in one breath they will say, "Oh, we're being oppressed by your heteronormativity," and then in the
Yeah.
second breath, they'll try to bully you into getting married.
Look, we've got to the point where no matter what you do, no matter what you do, you're still the bad guy, right? It doesn't matter. You're trying to help, you're oppressing. You're not oppressed. You're not helping. You're still oppressing. We got to that point. So today I can say that it got very bad. You know, but it's so weird today that I can actually say that perhaps in some Western countries, maybe, you know, we got to such a bad point that as a gay man I would say maybe today's straight men have it worse, right? Because they're constantly demonized, they're constantly criticized, they're constantly criminalized just for being straight men. And I think that is absurd because, as I told you before, I mean, my best friends are straight men, and actually I think that they're the most decent, good people in the world. I love them, I care about them, right? We grew up together since the late 1980s. You know, when I was 17 in 1989, and I met them, you know, we were always hanging out together, we were always together. They're two straight guys, and I'm a gay. They never gave me problems. They're very smart, they're very good, they're always helping others, and I grew up with them thinking, how can they be horrible people if they are amongst the most decent, good people that I know,
Right.
right?
Well, it makes you wonder about a lot of the media generated buzz against homosexuals by saying, well, basically criticizing the people you're talking about as being homophobic, when actually that's not really true.
Yeah, well, the only thing I can say is that, you know, they're giving the idea that they're helping gay men or they're supporting gay men. Personally, I don't really believe it. I
Mm.
actually give a completely different version of that, and I would say that they're exploiting gay men, you know, as a minority who is bullied, who is harassed,
Mm.
which, you know, sometimes it's just not the case. You know, I find it almost embarrassing to say that I live in Central Europe. You know, if they complain about these so-called diabolical white patriarchies, well, actually, I enjoy the best rights in this world. You
Right.
know, how can you complain about a white patriarchal society if I, as a gay man, and them as women we're actually enjoying the best rights,
Yeah.
right? So that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, they've given visible minorities the same false concepts by convincing them that they're victims, especially women, visible minorities, that they're victims. But like I said before, when I was watching that last Sargon of Akkad video, uh,
Mm.
you had a woman standing up in front of an audience who was a visible minority,
Yeah.
Middle Eastern maybe, I can't remember exactly, standing up and basically saying in front of an audience, I am a victim, I am being persecuted, I have no rights, and
Sure.
therefore I have the right to be racist against all white straight males, and
Yeah,
and
of course.
she's being applauded. And I'm thinking, if you're so oppressed, how are you able to even fucking do that?
Yeah.
How are you able
It's
to stand up
yeah.
and be absolutely racist towards somebody without any consequence if you're so fucking
It's
oppressed?
Yeah, it's disgusting to the point that you realize that actually uh, these people, either minorities or women or gay men or homosexuals, they actually most of the time enjoy the best rights precisely in the so-called Western white patriarchies.
Hmm.
I would rather die than live in, say, in the Middle East or India or Africa. I would never go there. I would never live there because
Hmm.
I know that these society are extremely homophobic. I don't
Yeah.
want people to stone me to death or behead me or I don't do some shit thing because of my sexual orientation. But here in Switzerland, in Central Europe, in this so-called white patriarchal society, I get the best rights in the world. I can live, nobody's killing me. I can actually, if I want it, I can get married. It's not real marriage, but it's a pax. I don't know how to say it. The pax is a pacte de solidarité civile. Basically, it's some sort of civil union, and it's actually very beneficial and very convenient to gay men. When gay men here get in a relation officially, they
Hmm.
can go to the mairie, which is the sort of commune. It's the how can I say the town hall.
Hmm.
They end up paying much less taxes. In a third world country, they would stone me to death. Here, they would help me to the point, that there are many organizations, that there's everything. Why there are many gay clubs, there are many things. So how can I possibly complain that I'm being oppressed as a gay man since I'm enjoying the best rights in the world precisely in what they would shame as a white patriarchal society,
Hmm.
And these women, they don't know what they're talking about because they should spend 1 or 2 days in the Islamic Republic of Iran or in Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
then they would experience, the horrors of real, oppression or discrimination.
Yeah.
How on earth can you claim that either in Canada or in Sweden, where every single thing is in your favor, from the first institution to the last authority, from the first organization to the last service, everything is in complete favor of women? How can you possibly claim that you're oppressed? Who is oppressing you? A justice system that gives absolute priority to women? What is oppressing you? An education system where women are being far more successful than males? Or perhaps marriage where women get all the booty when all the money and all the benefits when men and women they get separated or divorced, women get all the money and you're being oppressed. How are you oppressed in a
Yeah.
system that gives you absolute priority all the time? It's favoring you over men basically 100% of the time, and you claim that you're oppressed. That's the victim status that they have to claim over and over because they want to extract more and more and more. That's what they want. They want more. You give them more, and they want more.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. That
Well,
is exactly what's happening.
it's interesting because on the outside, if you were to kind of look at what we've just said, sort of from a
Yeah.
naive point of view,
Yeah.
you might think that this sort of system of feminism and constant victimhood and illusion of oppression, you'd think that it couldn't last. You'd think that it would just fall right apart at the seams, but it doesn't. And
Well, by now, no. Yeah. Yeah,
and
I would agree.
I think that one of the reasons it doesn't fall apart is because it's one thing to control the narrative, right?
Yeah.
But it's another to control sort of the illusion of popular opinion, and I think they achieve that through media. And it makes
Yeah.
me wonder who's controlling the media because, for example, when I was listening to that Honey Badger podcast just recently, and
Yeah.
I picked out a few things. Karen Strong was saying that she gets invited to do talks, but then afterwards is never ever invited back because
Right. Okay.
because she doesn't support that narrative. In other words, they have to maintain that illusion and make it the popular narrative or the illusion of popular narrative, because that's
Yeah,
what
I understand that.
yeah,
Yeah, I understand.
to me, media creates the illusion of popular opinion.
Look, I think that they're all kind of exploiting one another because one we say una mano lava l'altra, which means one hand washes the other, right?
Mm,
And basically, this is exactly what I was saying before about gay and lesbian organizations who are supporting feminists and feminists are supporting them. They're basically exploiting one another. They're exploiting each other's victim status. That's what they're doing. And no, I presume that it's convenient also to many politicians or medias to exploit this. They're also exploiting the narrative because it's so easy. It's so easy to sell and it's so easy to buy. You just have to claim that women are being oppressed, or there is some ridiculous war on women in America. People just buy it. So I presume that they're just exploiting a very commercialized narrative. So basically, they're kind of exploiting one another. It's mutual exploitation, right?
yeah, yeah. And I guess to them it's beneficial. It must be.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It must be. To politicians, what do they know? That women are the majority of voters.
Yeah.
So the moment you know that, you only have to panel this show. They only have to, basically kiss their, say, oh, women, like Barack Obama once said, oh, women are smarter than men. And you have a bunch of women applauding, yeah, we're smarter, you got that kind of shit. And I think that there are intelligent, rational women who are thinking, what the hell is this crap? Basically a politician being a slimy snail trying to be cheesy with a bunch of hysterical women and talking about that shit. That doesn't make sense. How can you claim that? That doesn't make sense. It's just, what are they doing? They're kind of mutually exploiting one another.
Yeah. Well, how about we go to another word that has been hijacked, and that is masculinity.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I think that today masculinity is just synonymous to something dangerous, something
mhm.
potentially dangerous to everybody. The criminalization of masculinity. Turning masculinity is something toxic or dangerous. Men are a bunch of rape apologists or child molesters, pedophiles, sexual harassers to the point. I don't know if you've watched that video where that woman in New York, she was the 10 hours of walking downtown New York, verbal street harassment, because some guy told her, "Hi, girl, how are you?" And that's apparently verbal street harassment. And we've got to the point where masculinity is basically constantly criminalized. It's constantly shamed, constantly blamed, and that is actually, and this is actually a very interesting topic because this is another thing that I was trying to discuss in other hangouts with other MGTOWs.
Mhm.
And I was trying to give, my suggestion, just the way I said before, don't entirely reject words like the patriarchy and heteronormativity only because these words have been infiltrated and hijacked by gender ideologues. Don't do that because that's not a smart strategy. At the same time, I keep telling MGTOWs, especially straight men, what is part of feminist theory? The fact that there is something inherently toxic and dangerous with men's sexuality, men's nudity. So if you are an anti-feminist, you reject that, right?
Right.
So what I don't really understand and what I really dislike, not only as a gay man, but also as a rationalist and an anti-feminist, what I don't understand is why the moment you understand that part of feminist language and feminist theory is to constantly demonize and criticize masculinity, why are you doing that? Why would you do that? That's not a convenient strategy, right?
Mhm.
And what I don't understand and what I don't like is when men, in particular, have to admit, straight men, when they talk about themselves or their sexuality or their nudity as something either gross or disgusting.
Yeah.
If you do that, why do you believe that feminists don't have the right to do that if you are doing that in the first place?
Right.
And I have been in hangouts with some other MGTOWs who are also straight men, who are, I must confess that most of them are very friendly. They're very good. They never gave me problems. The majority of MGTOWs never gave me a problem for being gay. But sometimes, I listen to I pay attention to their language. And sometimes I hear them saying, "Oh, that's fucking gross. Male nudity, that's just disgusting. The penis, gross, gross." Why are you doing that? Why are you throwing, a load of crap on your own sexuality, on your own nudity, on your own anatomy? Why would you do that? Because if you do that in the first place, what makes you think that feminists don't have the right to do that? You're doing that to yourself. Don't expect feminists to say nice things, because what are they supposed to think? If men talk about themselves in such a horrible way, why shouldn't I do that?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point, because I was just thinking, the female body is often used as a
venerated. Venerated.
Venerated.
Yeah. It's worshipped.
Yeah, the female body is worshipped. It's venerated. I mean, and they'll use it in advertising. They'll use it in movies. But it's very rare that you'll see the naked male form.
Well, it wasn't rare before. If you look at history in ancient times, there are many examples. In Roman culture, in Latin culture, in Greek culture. For example, throughout the Middle Ages, especially during Renaissance, starting from the 1500s and 1600s, there was a lot of, the male body, male anatomy wasn't demonized, it wasn't criticized, it was actually shown as something pleasant, something nice.
Right.
It's predominantly in this extremely gynocentric and feminist new world where women's bodies are constantly venerated, while male bodies are constantly either demonized or vilified or criticized or criminalized, to the point that, if you look at all the main characters of today's extremely misandric culture, how are men portrayed in movies, in cinema, in telefilms, and even cartoons, and children are watching this. Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, they're all these fat, lazy, stupid, mentally retarded, toxic, sexist idiots. That's what children are watching. They're watching that men are either stupid or officially mentally retarded, or they're racist. I'm thinking of, for example, American Dad, Stan Smith, who is this Republican, sort of extremely racist, homophobic, misogynist. All these characters. And if you watch a lot of these productions, TV series, men are usually either criminals or they're rapists or they're monsters. And it's a constant hammering. There is something inherently wrong with men's sexuality, men's nudity, and it's a constant hammering.
Okay, look at it this way. If you would agree that a true patriarchy, by its true meaning,
the real meaning,
real patriarchy, let's say that it to some degree exists in Saudi Arabia, okay? Now, if it's true, look at how the real patriarchy venerates the female body. It worships it so much that it must be hidden.
Exactly, that is an excellent point, and that is something that a lot of people don't understand, because once again, what are feminists doing? They want to control the narrative because they have one target, one goal, which is claim victim status as much as they can. So they're turning everything, every single thing, into its misogyny.
Yeah.
But that actually has a completely different meaning. First of all, the fact that women wear the veil or the hijab or I don't know, usually the Islamic veil, actually I believe that it's predominantly women who want to, get in touch with their religion, with their traditions, and they do it to have, a better spiritual contact. I don't really believe that it's because men are trying to force them. We do have Muslims here in Switzerland,
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to them. I don't believe that it's usually men forcing women. You have to wear the veil, otherwise I'm going to beat you. No, actually, many of the Muslims living here, and some of them are very open-minded. You know, they don't have a problem with me at all. It's usually their women who say, no, I want to wear the veil.
Yeah.
I have been to Morocco, I have been to Safi and to Marrakesh, I've been to Egypt, I have been to Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, and I've spoken to the women, especially in Morocco. In Morocco, I was a guest. There is a friend of mine who has a colleague, and he has, his hometown is Safi in Morocco. And when I've been there, I was there for like 10 days, and most of the people there were just fantastic, just were wonderful. And we went on a short trip to Marrakesh, and I was with his sisters, and we were talking about Islam, the Quran. They were trying to teach me how to read the Arabic alphabet, and they gave me the idea that it's not true at all that they were forced. They told me here in Morocco, women are not forced by anyone.
Yeah.
The law is that you wear the veil if you want it. If you don't want it, you don't wear the veil.
Yeah.
And they all told me that they wear the veil because it's their decision. They want to do that. So I don't know why some people believe it's the poor women who are oppressed. No.
No.
And what you were saying before, the fact that they cover, it's exactly what you were trying to say. Women as these beautiful creatures, they're so beautiful that they have to protect their beauty.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
That is the point. It's like you have a wonderful object or a car or something precious, and you keep it safe.
Yes.
And what is that saying? What is that saying?
Well,
that you're actually oppressing that object, or are you trying to say that other people might steal it? So you're actually criminalizing others. Women are not criminalized by wearing the veil. They're actually venerated to the point that their beauty is so important, right?
Yeah.
How dare you even look at her? You are no one to look at her. I see it from that perspective. I don't see it from the perspective, women are so disgusting that we have to cover them. No, it's the other way around.
No, it's not. It's absolute veneration. Yeah, it's absolute veneration, man.
Exactly.
If you have something valuable like a precious stone, you put it away somewhere.
Exactly, because you care.
Yes.
Because you care. So how can anyone claim that men don't care? They do care. Yeah. They care a lot, and they protect their women, especially Muslim countries. They protect women all the time, and you can see, for example, I just watched a video just yesterday. A video shot in India where they were trying to do this documentary. They were trying to show the phenomenon of white knights and vaginas in India. And so basically there were a man and a woman with some cameramen, and basically it was all staged. They were actors. But basically the woman actress, she basically was asked to tell another guy he was also an actor. This Indian woman would say, "Did you push me? How dare you push me? Why did you push me?" And the male actor was saying, "No, I didn't push you. Why?" It was all staged. But the people around, they were not actors. They were real, normal people. They immediately jumped on him. They started to slap him, and they immediately started to white knight. And they were almost going to beat the crap out of him. The sort of mob justice.
Yes.
An angry mob who immediately jumps on the man. How dare you even have the audacity to suggest that the patriarchy is a societal structure placed there to ruin women?
Yeah.
Where you actually, if you go to traditionalist countries and nations, you have the exact opposite. That man didn't even have the right to explain. They were truly going to beat the crap out of him. And at a certain point, both the man and the woman had to say, "Camera, camera, camera." And they had to say, "This is just a document. We were just shooting a documentary."
Yeah.
And then they didn't lynch him for just a few seconds. So what kind of patriarchy is that? A patriarchy who would just jump on a man and almost kill him just because a woman said, "You touch me," what?
Yeah.
Are you out of your mind?
Well, another concept within Saudi Arabia that, I mean, veneration is not just sort of a covering or protection from, let's say, male sexuality, but it is also protection from responsibility. And
Yeah.
for one,
Oh yeah.
in Saudi Arabia, right, women aren't allowed to drive. They're
Yeah.
protected from that responsibility.
They're not allowed to drive. They have their chauffeurs. They have
Yeah.
their personal drivers. Can you imagine that? You know, I could say the exact same thing about Queen Elizabeth II and say, oh, she's not a. Do you see Queen Elizabeth II driving her Rolls Royce? How many times have you seen the Queen of England driving a Ferrari? She doesn't drive not because she's oppressed, but because she has her own personal servant.
Yeah.
That's why. It's serving her. And this is something a lot of people don't understand. Oh, poor thing, they're not allowed. Yeah, the Queen of England, she's not allowed to. No, that's not the way to put it. It's better to say she has her own army of personal chauffeurs who drive her around.
Yeah.
So how can people actually come up to that stuff? You know, that if you think about it rationally, it doesn't make any sense until you realize, oh, wait a minute, I forgot a little thing, that they're just trying to control the narrative because their primary target is victim status.
Yeah. Well, I read an article not too long ago where they're going to put women the concept of allowing women to drive. They're going to kind of slowly implement it in Saudi Arabia, and a lot of the women refused it.
Oh yeah, I know. Yes, of course. I mean,
they didn't want that responsibility.
You want me to drive a car? How dare you? You know, I have my servants. What the hell is wrong with you? You know, it's just exactly what I said before. You know, we should ask the Queen of England, you know, why don't you drive your car? And she would say, me driving the Rolls Royce? What the hell is wrong? I'm the Queen, you know. I have my bitch here is going to drive me around, you know. Yeah. So
well, imagine your whole life you didn't have to drive.
But exactly. But that's not the only point. You know, women don't have to drive in Saudi Arabia. Well, they do drive here in the West, but do they have to build infrastructure? No. Do they have to build highways and roads and streets and traffic lights? Do they have to build a system? And this is exactly what I was saying before. Women don't build systems. They just want to be part of it, but they don't want to build it. You know, it takes a huge infrastructure to get you to drive a car. You know, the driving license alone doesn't get you anywhere. You need cars which are built in factories. You need roads, streets, highways. You need oil platforms in the middle of the ocean. You need millions and millions of men for that woman to get the driving license.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's interesting because it almost seems, to a certain degree, that feminism is trying to push society back to a more extreme form of the original patriarchy. Because here's an example. You notice that often in Western media, it almost seems like feminists are trying to like push for women to cover up more.
Oh yeah.
You know, yes. It's very strange. And
you just have to ask yourself: do you really believe that they want real, full gender equality across the board? Do you really believe that that's their real target? Of course not.
And imagine this is just a hypothetical situation. Imagine if it got so extreme, and let's say in Sweden, where they passed a law where all men must drive women around. How many women would like vote against that?
Yeah. Oh God, you know, it's just madness, just insanity.
But there's a schism, man. There's a schism that I see, and I don't really understand it. And if we go back to what we were talking about in the media and how men are, that masculinity, male behavior is sort of demonized.
Constantly.
Yeah, but on the opposite end that you see happen, and I just watched this recently in a man-woman myth video about how media portrays men and women. And one thing that he mentioned was that more and more over the last few decades, we're seeing women take on more masculine roles in films. You know, more kick-ass women.
But that's just the narrative, because you know that doesn't apply to the real world. You know, in fiction, you have all these strong independent feminist women who are really kick-ass.
Yeah.
But hang on a minute, does that apply to the real world?
No, of course
Where?
not.
When? I mean, you know, media is just trying to portray women as these infallible, wonderful women who take care of others, they take care of minorities, they're smart, they're brilliant. But, you know, it's not about putting them down. I don't want to do that. You know, if a woman is smart, good for her and good for everybody else. But, you know, is that truly the case? We should ask ourselves, are they portraying men and women the way they are? Of course not, because they keep, you know, vilifying and showing men as brutes, you know, as violent, as child molesters, pedophiles, wife beaters, creepy monsters, you know. And you have to ask yourself, if that is what they're showing, are they really being serious about gender equality? Of course not. You cannot promote gender equality by showing that one gender is a monster and the other gender is a victim or is this wonderful paragon of a superior being who has special abilities like multitasking. Women have emotional intelligence, you know, all of that, and you're thinking, that's not gender equality. If they keep talking shit about men and keep putting women on the pedestal, they don't want equality. They're just trying to give us the idea that men are monsters and women are innocent angels and victims.
Okay,
That's
but
the opposite of gender equality.
okay, but my question is this: if we can define masculine traits as being aggressive, strong, independent, assertive, then and if those masculine traits are considered toxic by feminism, why are they applying those same traits to women in the media and praising them?
That is an excellent argument, you know, because, for example, feminist women have claimed for a very long time that men are always fighting wars, that they're always destroying everything, right? And, you know, what I would say is, well, in that case, shouldn't be in favor of peace all the time? Shouldn't you be promoting humanism, you know, a peaceful living? So why are they trying to portray women, you know, and say that, you know, women should be part of the army, for example, they should be involved in combat? And I think, I'm gonna admit, if you are against war and you're trying to shame men as these warmongering, you know, these creeps who are always fighting, always destroying, why do you want women to get their role, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking, let's say, as an example, as a feminist woman, and I'm actually criticizing and I'm criminalizing masculinity. I'm saying all these horrible men who are always destroying everything. They're always fighting wars. So at that point, I would say, hang on a minute. If I'm criticizing that, and I hate that, I hate wars, I hate destroying things, I don't want to be part of that, right? It's like me as an atheist. I criticize the Roman Catholic Church. Right? What does it mean? That I don't want to be part of it. It's like I, as an atheist, I criticize the Roman Catholic Church, but I'm complaining that the Roman Catholic Church does not allow me to be a priest. Hang on a minute. Why do I want to be a priest in the first place? I don't want to be part of it. I mean, if I'm against the church, and I am as an atheist and a rationalist, and also a gay man, I'm against it, I don't want to join them. If you are criticizing the war, the men destroy everything, they're always destroying and fighting, you don't want to join the fight. So a decent, good feminist woman should say, I don't want wars and armies anymore. I don't want you to send other people to wars, and I don't want you to send either my child, my son, or my daughter, right? So the contradiction here is that while saying that, then they want to do the best they can to join what they have been criticizing from the first place.
Yeah, they criticize masculinity and its traits that I mentioned, but then they try to emulate it. And
well, that clearly means that there is a lie somewhere there. So where is the lie? The lie is in the narrative and in the constant victim status and in the constant shaming and blaming men, right? That is the lie. The fact is that you were saying before, you know, the feminist version of masculinity, the toxicity of masculinity is in their aggressiveness. Really? But what, women can't be aggressive? Who said that?
Well, it's all
Said
these
that women
traits.
can't be, huh?
It's all those traits. It's aggressive, assertive, independent.
But who said that women can't be aggressive? They can. Sometimes
Mhm,
they're very aggressive.
mhm.
They
But
can be very aggressive. You
yeah,
know, there isn't only physical aggression, there is also psychological aggression.
yeah.
Why do you think that a woman like Erin Fitzy once said that women sometimes just behave like domestic terrorists?
Mhm, mhm.
Why would you claim that?
Yeah.
Because if we talk about psychological manipulation and psychological violence and psychological aggressiveness, well, I don't think that women are immune. They can be very aggressive. In my experience, as I told you before, the worst kind of homophobia, it came from the women of my family.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've seen a lot of women doing horrible things, not only to men, but also to one another.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So talk about aggressiveness. You know, if you want to learn something about aggressiveness, you know, like Erin Pitti once said, and other people were talking about gender issues, put two women together, and if you look at, for example, gay couple, gay men, I don't see as much violence as I can see, and I've seen it when
In
I was in my
lesbian.
20s and 1990 in lesbian couples. Oh
Yeah.
my God. You know, if I don't to get me started there,
Well,
because I had
there's
lesbian friends, they were just beating the crap out of one another.
well there's modern day statistics to back that claim up. Um,
Yeah.
when it comes to violence in cohabitation between women, lesbian
Well,
women,
it's
it's
the
huge.
false assumption that men have higher testosterone levels and therefore they're more aggressive. I don't agree with that because, you know, there are other studies which are promoting the idea that testosterone doesn't necessarily you know, push to aggressiveness or violence. Actually, there are studies which are suggesting that testosterone makes you more rational
Yeah.
and more in control,
Logical.
and logical and in control,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
I've watched once a documentary on it was domestic violence in, say, building in some apartment blocks. I don't remember if it was in the Dominican Republic or something, but there was actually a police officer who he said in that documentary,
Hmm.
it's always women starting the fights. They're always fighting one another. And do you know the reason for that? Usually men don't want to fight with their other neighbors because they have more physical strength. So, you know, a fight between two men or many men can be very serious.
Hmm.
Women have nothing to stop that, and when they have to start a fight with their neighbors, I remember that many women in my families, oh my God, they were fighting for the stupidest things, the most ridiculous things, and they were starting this huge fight. So talk about aggressiveness as if only
Well,
men can be aggressive and women cannot be aggressive. No, women can be aggressive, perhaps using language or psychological manipulation, but they can be very aggressive.
well, consider this, man. I mean, let's say that we can agree with the concept that perhaps testosterone somehow applies to being more logical, reasonable, and have self-control. Um,
Yeah,
now, if that's true, think about it this way: a man, and when you're talking about your neighbors, a man
yeah.
would think twice before starting a conflict with his neighbor because
There it is,
well,
exactly.
because he has reason and logic. He has foresight, and he can think, well, this would be not beneficial to me in the future because if I'm fighting with my neighbor, maybe one day I need something from him. You
Oh
understand?
yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, why get aggressive with someone that's living right next to you when it might, in the end and down the road, not be beneficial to you? Whereas I don't think women have the capacity of foresight that men do.
Look, just look. In 1997, I went to live alone in my, you know, I had my own apartment near the airport where I was working.
Hmm.
You know, in my apartment block,
Hmm.
there were other families. You know, I can tell you without any doubt, all the men living there, they were all friendly, all good. They were always helping, and they were always helping one another with the idea we help one another, we help each other. The women in that apartment block, oh my God, you know, talk about witches. They were always giving dirty looks, you know, always being suspicious, you know, seeing monster behind every wall. And I was thinking, what the hell is wrong with them? You know, always being scared. I don't know if that is a protective instinct because they have to protect their children, and for that reason, indirectly, they kind of tend to see, I don't know, aggressiveness coming from all over the place. But you know, what I've noticed is that a lot of these men, you know, they were being. If I had a problem, you know, my sink or something in my house, they would immediately come and solve the problem. You know, men are problem solvers.
Yeah.
That's what they are. Women are not really problem solvers because they have their men showing up and solve all the problems, right?
Yeah, right. Well, another thing I wanted to mention about considering like this, like I mentioned before, this sort of schism where women tend to demonize masculinity or consider the attributes of masculinity to be toxic, yet they also kind of want to emulate it, and you see it in the media. Another schism, which is kind of going back to what we were talking about, women covering up in Saudi Arabia, is that, for example, a lot of stuff you'll see in the media today, feminism going like video games are sexualizing women because they're showing big boobs and not wearing clothes, right? And then of course is your body beach ready? You know, that's just sexualizing a woman's body, which in my mind is sort of a push to have women cover up more, right? I mean, look into the comic books; they've been pushing to turn the female characters almost androgynous, you know.
Well, it's the whole thing. Don't you dare look at me.
Yeah.
Because my value is too high for you. You can't afford me. Don't you dare look at me.
Well, this is the schism of it. I mean, if that's what they're kind of pushing for, why did they protest often with their tits hanging out? See, I don't understand that. It's like schizophrenic to me.
Yeah, I do understand it because it's just complaining. You have to complain all the time. You have to give the idea that you're a victim, and you have to criminalize men all the time. So, you know, women cover up. It's because the patriarchy is trying to oppress women, and the patriarchy does not allow women to explore their sexuality. If women are naked, it's because the patriarchy is trying to sexualize and objectify. You know, whatever happens, they're victims, and men are just bad. That's what's happening. We all know what's happening. This is exactly what's happening.
I don't know, man. I think it's almost like don't look at me unless I allow you to.
Yeah.
Whereas in, let's say, real patriarchy, women are sort of it's more expected for them to stay covered because men have more power, so they're allowed, they have the power and they're allowed to protect women more. Whereas here, men have been so demasculized. What is the word?
Well, you know, if you think about first wave feminism, you know, in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, you know, women were campaigning for women's right to vote or obtain the driving license. I don't know. They had certain goals, right? But if you think about second wave feminism during the 1960s, it was predominantly about women's sexual liberation. Now we already have a contradiction where basically first wave feminism is almost entirely incompatible with second wave feminism, because, you know, I often say if we had a time travel machine and we could travel back in time to the late 1800s during first wave feminism, and we could tell them, you know, the suffragettes and first wave feminists in a very prudish era, you know, in the Victorian era, and we could tell them that second wave feminism was about freeing women's sexuality. It was about abortion, and was about supporting gay rights. I think that first wave feminism would just be completely horrified, because that wasn't their intention, right? So second wave feminism was a completely different thing. It was basically predominantly about freeing women from this supposed sexual slavery, you know, allowing women to explore their sexuality. And then you have a third wave feminism, where actually instead of freeing women, you know, allowing them to live their sexual life in a free way, no, the third wave feminism is basically about demonizing not only men's sexuality, but sex in general. Sex is constantly portrayed as something negative, either rape, this obsession with rape and sexual harassment, right, and sexual violence. We have three different feminisms of three different waves, which are incompatible one with the other.
Yeah.
What is that suggesting? What is that suggest? It's suggesting to me that they're always complaining. No matter what's happening, they have to complain. Now we have to ask ourselves, why are they doing that? Why do they always complain? Always, whatever happens. If a woman is too covered up, it's because the patriarchy doesn't allow her to explore her sexuality. If a woman is showing skin, then it's because the poor thing, she's sexualized and objectified. It's a constant, this is a constant hammering, complaining. We have to understand why is it the case, this perpetual, never-ending complaining.
It
right?
sounds schizophrenic to me.
Well, it sounds form like psychopath, but I'm receiving some. I think that this complaining, the fact that women have this tendency of complaining a lot, and I've seen it a lot in my family, in my Italian family, in my English family. I've seen it a lot when I was studying, when I was working, and they do tend to complain a lot. Feminism it looks like a huge ideological complaining, right? They are always complaining about something. Why is that the case? I believe this is just my opinion. Perhaps some people won't. They probably wouldn't agree with what I'm saying. But I think that there must be some anthropological explanation for that. And my explanation to that is that women complain because they're trying to extract more. It's basically some form of shit testing on a global scale, right? They want more and more. They pretend that men perform better and better, right? This is why they complain all the time. If I look at my sisters, the women of my family, and they were complaining all the time, it's because they want to extract more and more. They're basically shit testing their men to the point that sometimes men cannot stand that anymore, and they just cannot take that anymore.
Yeah, to me it's almost I guess you're right. I mean, it just no matter what happens, you're screwed if you do, and you're screwed if you don't.
Well, I think that a lot of guys can actually, they would probably agree with that. They can actually see something like that happening in either in their lives, or that it happened already in their lives. Living with a woman who is upset, who isn't satisfied, and these guys are trying to do the best they can to satisfy. They're thinking, I don't understand this. I'm doing everything I can, and yet she's not satisfied. She's not happy. So why is that the case? Because I think that they're just biological programmed to make men perform better and better. I think that this perpetual and never-ending complaining is probably one of the most powerful engines of the human species. Because you must think that in primitive times, if men were working as hard as they could, as hunters and hunter-gatherers, or builders, or protectors of the tribe, or their civilization, their society, that you don't expect women saying, okay, you're doing fine, what you're doing is excellent. I don't expect to see that. I actually expect women to say, okay, you've done that, but you can do better. You can give more. You gave me, what, 80%? Now why don't you try and give me 85%? You're giving me 85%? Why don't you go and give me 95%, right? So I presume that in order to keep humanity as a system getting better and better, you have to make sure that men perform better and better. So women cannot tell men, okay, what you're doing is fine. They have to keep pretending more and more, right?
Right.
So I think that this is probably one of the most powerful engines of our species. Women keep pretending that men perform better so that they can be better providers, and so that our society can actually advance. I don't see women saying what you're doing is perfectly fine, and men saying finally I can actually finally have a rest because they're satisfied, and then humanity comes to a halt, and it doesn't. There is no progress.
Mm. Yeah, it's well, and again, that's one of the reasons why men are going their own way, because they're tired
Well,
of it.
because I think that many men are tired of this constant shit testing on a global scale. You're doing kind of fine, but you can do better.
Mm.
You're working very hard, but you can work harder, right?
Yes.
It's like a sergeant in the army, who keeps shouting at the private or a soldier.
Mm.
You as a soldier or as a private, you're doing the best you can, but is your sergeant ever going to say, "Oh, that's what you're doing is perfectly fine"? No. The sergeant is going to shout at you no matter what you do, because the sergeant wants you to perform better and better and better, right?
Right.
You're giving me 99%. Hey, give me 100%. But when you give 100%, they're going to, okay, give me 101%. Give me
Right.
more and more and more.
Mm.
And this is what they're doing. And this is exactly, in my opinion, this is exactly what Erin Pitsy was trying to say when she was saying they usually act like domestic terrorists. They terrorize the males because they keep expecting a better performance. You can do more, you can do better, and they're never satisfied. And what women today don't realize that not only it places men in a very ugly spot, because a lot of men are saying, I can't take this shit anymore. I have had enough of this. It's also placing women in a very ugly spot. Why? Because it means that they can never be satisfied. They will
Yeah.
never be happy because they want more and more and more. And the more Western men are giving Western women, the more they keep demanding. And they want more and more and more. Is there an end to this nightmare?
Yeah.
The end is called MGTOW.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, in the end, I think the men that are getting sick of it are just saying, okay, you know what? I'm gonna improve myself to the limit I want, and once I'm
But men
satisfied,
should men should improve themselves for themselves.
yeah, that's what I
You
mean.
as an individual, you should improve yourself because of yourself, not because of others, not because you're trying to please someone else,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And that's the crazy shit that makes me thinking. And I think so. Men have to really, literally kill themselves to satisfy a feminist woman who will never be satisfied, because no matter what you do, she will keep asking for more and more and more. This is a real nightmare. And I'm not surprised that the majority of suicide in America are men. I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised that many men today they don't want to get married. They were saying this deal is crazy. It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
I can give 100% of me. I can't give 150% of me. That's not possible. But
Yeah.
when we get to the point where actually women and the society and feminists are asking for more and more and more, what else do you want? Do you want blood? What do you want? Their death? Do you want to see them in a coffin? What the fuck do you want?
Yeah. Well, you know what? We've been going for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Why don't we close it there, and you and we can chat a little bit later outside of the live
Cool. Cool.
broadcast.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of good information covered there that I
Hmm.
will be interested in hearing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, or maybe maybe another time we can explore a little more,
Yeah,
this argument, or perhaps add some few more arguments because there are other things that we can talk about. I was also talking about hypermasculinity and hyperfemininity, so perhaps
yeah,
later as the
definitely.
hang up
We'll do
topic.
another one with some more of those topics. And actually, another
Cool.
topic I'd like to touch on the next time we speak is the one about the argument against artificial womb technology.
Oh yeah, that's very
So
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so
that's a
we'll
cool thing.
we'll set
Excellent.
up another talk for that, and anyway, hopefully it's interesting to everybody. Thanks for the talk, Jay. Appreciate it.
All right, that's cool. All
Okay,
right, take care.
talk to you later. Bye.
Take care later. Bye bye.